Okay, welcome everyone to this deep dive. We're getting into a really crucial topic today, something maybe not always discussed enough. Male factor infertility.
Yeah, and the source materials you shared, they really paint a picture of some, well, frankly, alarming trends in male reproductive health globally. We're talking the last few decades here.
Absolutely. So our goal today is to really dig into these sources, unpack what they say is driving this decline. Oxidative stress comes up a lot as like a major factor.
Right, and we'll also explore a science-driven approach that the sources put forward, something aimed at tackling these challenges.
Exactly. Think of this as your shortcut to getting up to speed on this complex area. We've got some surprising stats and insights, all pulled directly from the materials. So let's jump in.
Okay, so first off, what really hits you from these sources is just how significant male factor infertility is. It's not some minor thing, they say. It's involved in roughly 50% of infertility cases.
50%. Wow. That really counters the old assumption that infertility is mostly a female issue, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. The sources make it clear it's very much a shared challenge. And they get specific about the typical problems, you know.
What are the main ones they outline?
Well, they define the common issues clearly. You've got low sperm count. The
Right.
technical term is oligospermia. Then there's poor motility, meaning the sperm aren't swimming well. That's acinospermia.
Okay.
And finally, abnormal morphology, which is about the sperm's shape teratozospermia.
So count, movement, and shapes.
Yeah.
The big three. And the sources mention some standard benchmarks, right, from the WHO?
Yes, they use those WHO parameters as like a reference point. They mention needing a total count of at least 39 million,
Okay.
a concentration of 16 million per milliliter or more, and crucially, this progressive motility forward swimming of at least 30%. Falling below these, the sources say, really compromises fertility.
Right. So that sets the stage, what it is, how it's measured, but the why. That's where the sources really dig deep. What do they point to as the main cause?
This is where oxidative stress, or OS, really becomes central. The sources are pretty direct about it. They call it the primary driver. It affects somewhere between 30 and, get this, 80% of infertile men.
80%. Okay, oxidative stress. We hear that term thrown around. Can you break down what it actually means, simply?
Sure. Think of it like a scale that's out of balance. Your body naturally makes these things called reactive oxygen species, ROS. They can cause damage if there are too many. But you also have antioxidants to neutralize them. Oxidative stress is basically when you have way too much ROS or not enough antioxidants or both, the balance is off.
And sperm cells, the sources say, are particularly susceptible to this.
Extremely. That's a key point they make. Sperm membranes are full of these polyunsaturated fatty acids, PUFAs, which are really easily damaged by ROS. And unlike other cells, sperm have very limited internal repair mechanisms or antioxidant defenses. They're kind of vulnerable.
So their own structure makes them a target,
Mm-hmm.
and they can't really fight back effectively. What kind of damage are we talking about here? What does the OS actually do to them?
The sources detail a whole cascade. Lipid peroxidation, think of the fats in the membrane going rancid. Protein damage. Mitochondrial dysfunction, which hits their energy supply, their engine, basically.
Right.
And critically, DNA damage. Damaging the genetic material they carry. All this messes up their ability to swim, to find the egg, to fertilize it properly.
And this is just happening in a vacuum. The sources link this OS directly to, well, modern life.
Precisely. They connect the dots between this ROS overload and things like poor nutrition, all the environmental pollutants we're exposed to, lifestyle factors like chronic stress, being overweight, smoking, maybe even EMF exposure from devices. It's not abstract. These everyday things feed the problem.
Which leads us to maybe the most sobering point in these sources.
Yeah.
The actual documented decline in human fertility worldwide.
Yeah, this is presented as a major public health issue. The sources cite studies showing a really significant drop in semen quality across different populations over time.
And that stat, the 50 to 60% decline in global sperm counts since the 1970s, that's just massive. And they say it's still happening now in the 21st century.
That's what the sources indicate. Yes, a huge shift in just 50 years or so. And crucially, they directly link this decline back to the cumulative impact of all those environmental, lifestyle, and health factors we just mentioned. It's presented as a consequence of our changing world.
Okay, so let's drill down a bit more into how these specific factors contribute, based on what the sources say.
Yeah.
What about diet?
They point fingers at diets heavy in saturated fats, trans fats, high sugar foods, and low in the good stuff, fruits, veggies, fiber, antioxidants. This kind of eating pattern doesn't just lead to nutrient shortfalls needed for sperm, it actively increases overall oxidative stress in the body.
And it links to other health issues, too.
Definitely. The sources connect poor diet to obesity, insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, all conditions known to negatively impact fertility themselves. It's interconnected.
And the environment, all those chemicals.
Yeah, they list things like heavy metals, lead, cadmium pesticides, industrial chemicals like dioxins, plastics components like phthalates and BPA. The sources say these act as endocrine disruptors, messing with hormones and directly induce oxidative stress, damaging sperm DNA, motility, viability. The works.
Okay, and then our lifestyle habits, the daily grind.
Things like being sedentary, chronic stress, which is huge these days, smoking, drinking too much alcohol, maybe even that constant EMF exposure. The sources link these to hormonal imbalances, like lower testosterone and increased ROS production, ultimately hurting sperm development and quality.
Wow. So it's like a perfect storm, really. All these different angles hitting our natural defenses, especially for sperm, which are already vulnerable.
That's the picture the sources paint. It leads to poorer quality sperm and eggs, compromised DNA, which obviously impacts conception but could potentially have longer-term health implications too.
Right. So given this rather bleak picture, the sources then pivot to talk about potential solutions. They introduce something called Fertilix.
Yes, Fertilix is presented in the sources as a specific, patented line of supplements, preconceptual and prenatal. The stated goal is to tackle those root causes, nutrient deficiencies, and restoring that crucial redox balance we talked about.
And how do they say it's different from, other fertility supplements out there?
The main contrast drawn in the sources is the focus on evidence-based ingredients at carefully calibrated doses. They position it against supplements that might use, say, unproven herbal extracts or potentially excessive amounts of certain vitamins, arguing that too much antioxidant activity can actually backfire and harm sperm function. It's about balance.
Interesting. Okay, so let's unpack how Fertilix is supposed to work according to the sources and what features they highlight.
Well, the mechanisms described focus on hitting those core issues. Reducing oxidative stress with specific antioxidants, filling those nutrient gaps vital for sperm health, boosting mitochondrial function for better sperm energy, and protecting the DNA from damage.
And what about the formulation itself? Anything specific they point out?
One thing they emphasize is personalization. The sources mention 3 different formulations: preconceptual, plus, and max. The idea seems to be tailoring the support based on factors like age and how long a couple has been trying. For instance, they suggest plus for men under 35 and max for older men or those facing more significant challenges.
Personalized. That's different. They also flag something about vitamin E.
Yeah, that was highlighted as quite unique in the source material. Instead of just using the common synthetic form alpha-tocopherol, they state Fertilix uses full-spectrum vitamin E, all 8 natural forms, tocopherols and tocophenols. These are fat-soluble antioxidants, especially good, they say, for protecting those vulnerable sperm membranes.
Gotcha. And the other ingredients, did the sources provide evidence for them?
They stress that the ingredients are evidence-based. They give examples like vitamin C, lycopene, selenium, zinc, folic acid, carnitines. And importantly, they reference specific study findings for these ingredients, like selenium boosting motility and protecting DNA, vitamin C potentially doubling counts or improving motility, lycopene reducing DNA damage, zinc supporting maturation, all based on results cited at particular doses and durations in the source material.
And they mentioned the physical product quality, too.
All right, just briefly. High-quality manufacturing, vegetarian soft gel capsules, and blister packaging to protect the ingredients and ensure stability, those kinds of details.
Okay, let's back up a bit. Who's behind this? Who developed Fertilix, according to the sources?
It comes from a company called CellOxess LLC. The sources name the founders: Dr. Parviz Gar-Gozlu, with expertise in medicinal chemistry, and Professor John Aitken, a prominent name in reproductive biology. They really emphasize their scientific credentials, mentioning a combined total of over 800 peer-reviewed papers and dozens of book chapters. Serious research backgrounds.
And what was their motivation based on the sources?
The sources suggest it stemmed from seeing this growing infertility crisis and feeling that existing supplements often lacked rigorous scientific backing or personalization. The goal was apparently to bridge the gap between advanced research on oxidative stress and practical, effective support.
Did they mention any specific research validating the Fertilix formulation itself?
Yes, they pointed to a preclinical study published in a major journal, Human Reproduction, back in 2016. This study tested Fertilix in animal models that were specifically designed to mimic conditions of high oxidative stress relevant to infertility.
Okay, and what were the results cited from that trial?
According to the sources, the results showed that Fertilix reduced oxidative DNA damage in the sperm, improved sperm counts, and interestingly, lowered the expression of certain enzymes the body usually ramps up to fight OS. This suggested the supplement was helping manage the stress effectively.
And you mentioned earlier this idea of balance being important, not too many antioxidants. Did the sources elaborate on that?
Yes, they brought up the concept of reductive stress.
Yeah.
It's the idea that just throwing massive amounts of antioxidants at the problem can be counterproductive. It can disrupt the natural, delicate redox signals that sperm actually need for things like capacitation, the process they undergo to be able to fertilize an egg.
Oh. Well,
So the sources state Fertilix formulations are designed specifically to provide balanced antioxidant support, aiming to restore equilibrium without pushing things too far the other way into reductive stress.
right, that makes sense. So, stepping back, what's the bigger picture approach the sources recommend for tackling fertility challenges today?
It's definitely presented as multi-pronged. Diet is foundational, adopting something like a Mediterranean pattern, rich in those natural antioxidants, healthy fats, low glycemic foods.
Lifestyle changes too, obviously.
Absolutely. Reducing stress where possible, ditching smoking, limiting alcohol, getting regular physical activity, all highlighted as crucial.
And the environmental piece, since it's so pervasive.
The sources talk about environmental awareness, trying to minimize exposure to known pollutants and maybe EMFs. But they're also realistic, acknowledging that you can't avoid everything in the modern world. And that's where they position targeted measures like antioxidant supplementation as potentially helping to mitigate that unavoidable burden.
And the personalized supplementation, like Fertilix, fits into that mitigation strategy.
Exactly. The sources present it as part of that comprehensive picture, a way to address this specific oxidative stress and nutrient gaps that result from modern living, tailored to individual circumstances like age or fertility status.
So, to sum up why Fertilix gets the spotlight in these sources, what are the main reasons they give?
They really circle back to the scientific rigor behind it, the personalized approach based on need, and the focus on quality manufacturing. That's the core message.
And they specifically contrast it with others.
Yes, they do mention some competitors by name, like Fertilade or Fertility, suggesting those might rely more on ingredients with less robust evidence or potentially unbalanced doses, whereas Fertilix, they argue, sticks to proven components at carefully considered levels.
And the link to clinical experts.
They mention collaboration with places like the Berkeley Center for Reproductive Wellness, framing it as adding clinical credibility and offering users a trusted resource for information.
Okay, wow. We've definitely covered a lot of ground. Starting with the sheer scale of male factor infertility, the alarming decline linked so strongly to oxidative stress from modern life, and then looking at this specific science-focused approach presented in the sources.
Yeah, the big takeaways seem clear. Male infertility is a major issue. OS is a key driver fueled by our environment and lifestyles, and tackling it needs a broad strategy.
And within that strategy, the sources highlight Fertilix as one potential tool scientifically developed, personalized, aimed at those root causes. Now, if you, listening, want to learn more about the details we discussed from these sources, or about Fertilix itself, the material provided a specific place to go.
That's right. The sources recommend visiting www.berkeleycenter.com. Once you're there, look for the supplement shop, and under that, you should find a section titled Fertility Vitamins.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? How interconnected everything is, our daily lives, our environment, and something as fundamental as our ability to reproduce. Given everything we've discussed from these sources about these widespread factors, here's something to consider. How much agency do you feel you have over your own reproductive health today? And what steps, even small ones, might you consider based on this information? Definitely food for thought.